Hello friends, how are you all? I'm Nupur. Welcome everybody to my YouTube channel, Nature at the Very Core of Science. Today, I'm going to talk about Red Scare. Now, I'm sure that all of you have heard about this term Red Scare. Red was always associated with communism during the Cold War. And historically, the color red represented the blood of those who died in the revolutionary struggle of the French Revolution. In the Cold War, this Red Scare meant the fear of communist ideology infiltrating the United States. Now, we can just look at the brief history of communist ideology and its effects on the United States. So to start with, in 1848, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels wrote the Communist Manifesto, predicting that laborers, that means the proletariat, would unite and overthrow capitalism and private property. And it ended with the line, "The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. Working men of all countries unite." Now in 1919, the Bolshevik Revolution instituted a new government with communist ideology in Russia. The US experiences its first Red Scare. At that time, the US government targets and investigates people suspected of communism. And they were all driven by a fear of communism. Anti-immigrant policies of the early 1900s aimed to limit immigrants from Russia and Eastern Europe. Now, in 1999, the Communist Party of the United States of America formed. During the Great Depression, communism gained some support within the United States. The Communist Party of the US had peak membership in 1942 when 85,000 Americans were members. If you just consider at that time the population of about 135 million. Now, what happened during the Cold War? At that time, any attachment to communism was a huge personal and political risk in the United States. For instance, by 1950, most labor unions expelled any members associated with communism or the Communist Party of the United States. The tension of the Cold War intensified fears of communism in the United States. And by the 50s, early 50s, American fears of internal communist subversion reached a nearly hysterical pitch. It is confirmed by Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History. It's a historical fact. Now, Americans were afraid that communists could be lurking anywhere, such as schools, neighborhoods, workplaces, the media, or even in Hollywood. Often people associate the Cold War in the United States with the climate of fear and paranoia from the Red Scare. So this was the situation during the Red Scare. And there were so many images, even in the comic books published by Catholic Guild of Minneapolis in 1947 and 1960, and it was showing like a horror of tomorrow. At the face of communism, what could be happening. So there were red alert everywhere, as if red iceberg everywhere. So it was a very fearful environment created during the second Red Scare. Now, it is very relevant to talk about 1950s, the Red Scare or the fear of communist influence in the US and the time when Senator Joe McCarthy of Wisconsin began publicly accusing members of the US government of communist ties. Senator McCarthy's hunt for communists stoked fear and tension inside of the United States. For instance, McCarthy claimed that there were over 50 communists working for State Department. He called them enemies from within. And despite having little to no evidence, McCarthy continued to accuse government workers, public figures, and military members of ties to communism. These people were investigated and ostracized. His accusations did not uncover any meaningful disloyalty to the United States. So McCarthy's accusations cost many people their jobs, friends, and livelihood. People were afraid to challenge McCarthy. What if he accused them next? He was only stopped when he attempted to accuse members of the US Army of communist leanings. Now, while McCarthy served in the Senate, the House of Representatives also stayed busy during the Red Scare. The House Un-American Activities Committee, or HUAC, investigated accused communists. HUAC often held hearings to investigate political enemies and civil rights activists. Most famously, HUAC held hearings to investigate communist influence in Hollywood and the movie industry. Some of the accused, known as the Hollywood 10, refused to testify before Congress and were blacklisted by Hollywood. The Hollywood 10 attempted to stand up for freedom of speech and freedom of association, but they lost their jobs as a result. Some viewed that HUAC and McCarthy as necessary tools in the fight against communism and the Soviet Union, but others viewed HUAC and McCarthy as a witch hunt and a threat to Americans' personal freedoms. It is very pertinent to remember at this stage that Jackie Robinson, he was called to testify before HUAC, and he was asked to denounce famous black entertainer and activist Paul Robeson, who was accused of communist ties. And this was not an unknown fact. Time magazine published this. So this was the McCarthyism, which was a hunt for Un-American Activities Committee, or HUAC. So I think McCarthyism lives on as a catchphrase for the abuse of governmental authority and power, especially in areas of civil liberties.